I think it is an Achilles. I think all those Zapruders who broke it down online did a great job of showing, a lot like Aaron Rodgers, kind of where the snap happened. But look, this changes the franchise. And Jay, even though you and I are bickering back and forth on the whole, can they beat the Knicks? Will they beat the Knicks? Whatever. I think there are some real long-term ramifications to the Jason Tatum injury. Because let's remember, and Brian Robb of Mass Live, my buddy B-Rob did a great job of this. So next year, the Celtics have over $225 million committed in payroll to 11 players. The luxury tax line is 187. The second apron is 207. If the Celtics do nothing to their roster and look at Tatum as a $54 million loss this year, they're going to pay $280 million in tax. $280 million in a year where you're not going to have your best player. And there's a little bit of a change in ownership. Jay, I don't normally overreact, I don't think, to stuff like this. I'm really nervous as to what is going to happen to this roster moving forward. Do they start to think of a big shakeup in plan that Tatum might be back come February or March? And there's the long-term questions on Jason Tatum as well. I just think this injury could end up shaking up this franchise for the next 5 years, when I thought they were way closer to right than being wrong. You now remove Tatum out of this. There's trade wins all around. Somebody's going to get Giannis. Somebody's going to get better by getting that guy. So I wonder if the Celtics kick around. Do we look to maybe throw Jaylen Brown and someone in a deal and get into the Giannis sweepstakes and look to build their team a little differently moving forward?
Good stuff there. And what I'll say, right, as a Celtics fan, and I love me some Jaylen Brown. Don't get it twisted. I just don't think he's fully right now. And
I'd agree.
And I do think the all-pro, second team all-pro that put him in this sort of max player threshold, I think is somewhat borderline, right? I think he is a 1A or maybe a 2. But what I will say, Jason Tatum's ability to recover from what we're assuming is a torn Achilles I'm so curious about that, because for this Celtics franchise, right, unless I'm mistaken, Jason Tatum's going to turn 28 next March, right? Yep. So unless I'm mistaken, the Celtics' future and even the future of this dynasty, or Jason Tatum's dynasty, depends on one person, and that really is Jason Tatum. Was having a pretty good ball game before he went out. So a couple things on that, right? Kobe Bryant suffered his Achilles tendon rupture on April 12th, 2013. 35 years of age, or just before 35 years. Underwent surgery, returned to the NBA court on December 9th, 2013, after an eight-month recovery period, right? We know that Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers returned, right? Jamal Hill, Cody and I played in a basketball game with him, UFC fighter, hurt his Achilles. It was July of 2023, returned and fought at UFC 300 in April 2024. I understand there are doctors and people will say, oh, he'll never be the same after this injury. That very well may be the case. But as an optimistic Celtics fan, he's 27 years old. I most certainly believe if he has, and he's in tremendous physical condition, at this age, right, if he's able to have a good recovery, there's absolutely no reason why he shouldn't be available for the stretch run next year to get involved and potentially run to the postseason. The idea that the Celtics would be trash next year with a roster close to what it is now and not Jason Tatum, I don't buy into wholly, right? You look at a team like the Warriors adding Jimmy Butler. Had Steph not gone out, they could have run through the postseason. Minnesota's the 6th seed or whatever it may be. So I do believe that there's a great chance that Jason Tatum is playing in the postseason next year, even if he tore his Achilles last night. So as a Celtics fan, I'm not going to be upset about that. Their opportunity not to go back-to-back, that's always going to sting. But I actually think at this age, Jason Tatum has a great chance to still be a top 10 NBA player. I'm not going to spout out some random thing that says, oh, he can't be a top 5 player anymore. I believe in him. And 8 years, Kobe's too younger than Kobe when it happens. You never know.
Here's what sticks in my head. When Garnett got hurt, everything changed when it came to the second version of the big three, if we call them. If Bird and those guys were version 1, version 2 would have been Allen, Pierce, and Garnett. And they got one, and then Garnett got hurt. And then they weren't the same as a group.
Almost got 2, Gresh. 10-point lead in game 7.
Made it back to another one, no question. And what we found was that they were old and gassed, and then they had to start to try to change the roster over. And luckily, the Brooklyn people are idiots. That's what is in my head. And I'm with you. Tatum's going to bounce back. He should be fine. He may be a little different as a player. But if the player movement around Tatum and Brown was going to happen after this season, hopefully in celebrating a second championship, and then you look to move on from, say, Holiday or Porzingis or people like that, because the tax is ultimately going to get too big, you're going to have to start to move those assets now. And I think where Danny Ainge looked at it and was just like, well, KG will be back and everything will be fine, even though these guys are older. It didn't work out that way. Your point on Tatum, much younger than Garnett, no question. But the money is now the problem. The money is now, and that's where I wonder, how do you go about trying to retool this roster a little bit? Because Tatum and Brown are both signed through the 28-29 season, and Tatum in 29-30 has a player option for $71 million, which is crazy. Now, he's 27 now, rehabbing. By the time he gets there, he'll be 33 years old, making $71 million. And that's where we have to be like, boy, hopefully the guy is still in a lot of ways worth that kind of money. I just wonder, Jay, my biggest fear is this new owner is going to come in. Now they have a reason to change. Now they have a reason to shake it up. Yeah, Kevin Durant proved that the Achilles wouldn't be the end for Jason Tatum. I don't think anybody is ruling Tatum out. It's more the trickle-down effect of what's going to happen with the rest of the roster and how do they then move forward.
Well, and I just believe so. Yeah, and that's a great point, I guess, from my standpoint, right? Because I really believe last night they were losing no matter what. This season, even going down 0-2, right? It was going to be a very steep climb to win a back-to-back title. So in a way, for me, I understand all the salary implications, and I understand that. But I think there's a pretty good chance Jaylen Brown is still walking through that door next year. And I think there's a really good chance Jason Tatum will be back in the postseason.